Before we dive into today's chilling story, if you're fascinated by Reddit stories and unexpected twists, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us uncover more stories like this, bringing you deep into the heart of the most gripping stories. Don't forget to click the bell icon so you'll never miss an episode. Let's explore the shadows together. A brutal murder happened on a wedding day. This is known as the case of Gladys Ricart. Today, we delve into another chilling case. How well do you really know your exes? Are you aware of what they might truly be capable of? Often, we live with someone for years under the same roof, yet never fully understand who they are. The most frightening part is that during or after a breakup, these individuals can reveal their worst traits and the darkest sides of their souls, unleashing all their anger and hatred towards someone they once loved dearly. The story of Gladys Ricart exemplifies the true realization of the American dream. Originally an immigrant from the Dominican Republic, Gladys arrived in the U.S. with no money, connections, or language skills. Despite these barriers, she achieved a brilliant education and carved out a stellar career for herself, rising from a dishwasher to the chief accountant of a major corporation. In relationships, Gladys was always cautious and selective, having been deeply hurt in her youth, which left her a single mother. As a mature and established woman, she thought she had finally found a compatible partner, a man who was intelligent, dignified, and respected. Yet she could never have imagined that this man would turn into her greatest nightmare, tragically ending her life on what should have been her happiest day. Who was Gladys Ricart? Born on December 19, 1960, in a small province of the Dominican Republic, Gladys Maria Ricart was the youngest of 3 children. Raised alongside her older sister Norma and brother Juan, her parents strove to provide their children with a life superior to their own. In the mid-1970s, Norma, then just over 20, moved to the United States and settled in New York City, where she found a promising job and established a new life. Inspired by her sister, Gladys aspired to move to America in pursuit of better opportunities. She was a diligent student, consistently ranking among the top of her class. However, her life took an unexpected turn as a teenager when she began dating a boy from school, her first love. At 17, she became pregnant. Upon learning of the pregnancy, her boyfriend abandoned her, severing all ties abruptly. Gladys made the resolute decision to raise her child on her own, a choice that her parents fully supported. At 18, she welcomed a son named Davis and continued to live with her parents, who were a great help with the baby. While her parents cared for Davis, Gladys worked tirelessly, saving every penny to eventually move to New York and reunite with her sister Norma. After nearly 4 years of hard work and saving, she still didn't have enough to bring her son along. Nonetheless, in the summer of 1982, Gladys seized the opportunity to move to the United States. She settled in Manhattan, sharing a home with Norma and her family. Determined to be self-sufficient and not overstay her welcome, Gladys immediately threw herself into learning English and took on various jobs, washing dishes at restaurants in the evenings, distributing advertising flyers on the streets, and stocking shelves in supermarkets. As her command of English improved, Gladys enrolled in college while continuing to work multiple jobs. A year later, her proficiency led to a position as an accountant at a local company. Her academic journey didn't stop there. She pursued further education at a prestigious university, majoring in economics. By 1985, Gladys had secured a stable and promising job that allowed her to rent her own apartment and start saving to buy a place. With a steady income, she was finally able to bring her son from the Dominican Republic to live with her in the U.S. after completing her degree. Gladys's career skyrocketed. She became the chief accountant at a major travel company based in Manhattan. Recognized as a top-tier and indispensable asset, she had by then mastered English so well that her accent was nearly indistinguishable. A few years later, Gladys and Norma collaborated to help their brother Juan, along with his wife and 3 daughters, immigrate to the United States, expanding their family's presence and success in their new home. As well as their elderly parents, the entire family eventually settled in Manhattan, where they maintained close ties and supported each other. Gladys's brother also secured a good job, mastered English, and progressively climbed the career ladder. The children thrived in prestigious schools, and overall, the fortunes of this extended family were quite promising. By the early 1990s, Gladys had achieved nearly everything she had ever dreamed of. She held a well-paying, respectable job and rented a spacious apartment in a desirable neighborhood. Her son was enrolled in a top school, and her loved ones were nearby and well provided for. Despite these accomplishments, personal happiness, particularly in love, remained elusive. After her initial disastrous relationship, which left her a single mother without money or education, Gladys was exceedingly cautious in choosing a partner. Gladys worked relentlessly to secure a comfortable life for herself and her son Davis, never missing an opportunity to improve and excel in all her endeavors. Colleagues and acquaintances often labeled her a careerist, convinced she would forego personal relationships for professional advancement. Indeed, she rarely dated, focusing predominantly on her career. Yet, she continued to harbor hopes of finding a dependable man, marrying, and creating a fulfilling family life. Despite not owning a car and commuting by subway, it was on one warm autumn morning that Gladys's routine journey took an unexpected turn. She met Agustin Garcia, a 41-year-old man who immediately charmed her. He offered her his seat, polite and gallant, and when another seat opened up, he chose to sit next to her, sparking a casual conversation. Agustin proved to be witty and erudite, making her laugh with his jokes and earnest compliments. What deepened their connection was a shared heritage. Like Gladys, Agustin had also immigrated from the Dominican Republic, giving them common ground that felt both familiar and comforting. After their serendipitous meeting, Gladys and Agustin exchanged phone numbers, marking the beginning of their budding romance. But who exactly is Agustin Garcia? Born in February 1951 in the Dominican Republic, Agustin's early life was marked by significant challenges. He grew up in poverty, never knowing his father, and after his mother's death, he resolved to radically transform his circumstances. In the mid-1970s, Agustin emigrated to the United States, determined to carve out a better future. He worked tirelessly, learned English, and once he was somewhat established, he began to actively assist his fellow compatriots who had also come to the U.S. seeking better opportunities. Understanding firsthand the difficulties of establishing oneself in a foreign country, Agustin provided comprehensive support in securing jobs, finding housing, and learning the language. By the 1980s, Garcia had become a leading figure in the large Dominican community in New York State. He was a prominent and influential individual, having successfully developed his own business with an office located in central Manhattan. Agustin owned a 2-story house in an elite neighborhood, several high-end cars, and a yacht. Previously married, he was now divorced and had sole custody of his 2 sons, a responsibility he took very seriously. Known for his kindness, empathy, and generosity, Agustin was a pillar in his community. His role as a community leader meant he was frequently sought after for assistance, and he never turned away those in need. He was always ready to listen and often covered expenses for his compatriots and their families out of his own pocket. In 1985, Agustin was appointed head of the Dominican Chamber of Commerce in New York and managed several other significant organizations linked to the Dominican Republic. His charitable efforts were extensive. He spearheaded initiatives that led to the opening of several schools and kindergartens, as well as a training center for English language learners and an employment center to help immigrants find work. Agustin typically avoided the subway, preferring the comfort of his own car. However, on that particular day, his usual mode of transport was in the shop for repairs, and he was pressed for time due to an important meeting. With the city ensnared in a massive traffic jam, the subway emerged as his only viable option to arrive on time. It was there, amid the bustling commuters, that he encountered Gladys in what would turn out to be a fateful, perhaps fatally so, meeting. Dressed in an elegant business suit, Gladys immediately caught Agustin's eye. Seizing the moment, he initiated contact. Their conversation quickly revealed a shared heritage and similar struggles in adapting to a new country, which further piqued his interest. Before parting, Agustin asked for Gladys's phone number and handed her his business card, thoughtfully adding his personal home number as well. Throughout the day, Agustin found his thoughts returning to the captivating stranger. That evening, once home, he didn't hesitate to call her. He invited Gladys to dinner at a fine restaurant that weekend, an invitation she readily accepted. Agustin appeared to be the perfect match in every respect. He was kind, intelligent, well-educated, generous, and notably attentive, always listening intently to Gladys. He exuded the manners of a true gentleman, gallant and polite. Their life stories mirrored each other. Both were immigrants who had started from scratch, both had endured failed relationships, and both were single parents striving to raise their children alone. Their relationship blossomed quickly. They communicated daily, seizing every opportunity to be together. Agustin lavished Gladys with attention, presenting her with luxurious flower bouquets, extravagant gifts, and dining her in the finest restaurants. He never skimped on compliments and effortlessly bonded with her family and son. Everyone in Gladys's circle was thrilled for her, convinced she had at last found her long-sought happiness. Agustin's children too warmly welcomed Gladys. A year into their relationship, buoyed by this mutual acceptance and affection, Agustin proposed that Gladys move in with him, suggesting they start a new chapter together. Rickard was very happy. She and Davis left their rented apartment and moved into Agustin's expansive home. However, this marked the beginning of their troubles. Agustin's sons from his first marriage, both older than Davis, took to tormenting the younger boy. Despite the older boys being the instigators of numerous conflicts, Agustin invariably sided with his children. Gladys's family recalls how she had never been more eager to marry, hoping Agustin would propose. She implored Davis to steer clear of conflicts, but Agustin's sons relished in bullying him, never giving him a moment's peace. As Davis entered adolescence, Gladys grew increasingly concerned about the adverse effects this hostile environment might have on his future. Determined to address these issues, Gladys attempted a serious conversation with Agustin, who, however, failed to acknowledge the severity of the situation. He believed the children should resolve their differences on their own and refused to intervene. After much deliberation, Gladys decided she could not jeopardize her son's well-being and chose to leave Agustin's house. Agustin understood her decision and, not wanting to sever their relationship, rented a separate, spacious house for Gladys and her son. The couple continued their relationship, albeit under different circumstances. Yet the dynamics between them began to shift. Agustin's demeanor grew increasingly controlling. Once they started living apart, Agustin exhibited overtly possessive behaviors. He demanded constant communication, insisting Gladys be available to answer his calls at her home or office at any time. He scrutinized her social interactions meticulously, both professionally and personally. Initially, Agustin maintained a facade of concern, inquiring in detail about her daily activities, whom she met, and her conversations. Despite these changes, other aspects of their relationship remained as they were before the separation. Agustin continued to give Gladys flowers and jewelry, took her to fancy restaurants, and on trips to resorts. Rickard's family already saw him as almost a part of their family, and she was still hoping for him to propose. As time passed, Agustin became controlling and tyrannical, limiting Gladys's freedom and making it clear he didn't want to marry again because of his past failed marriage. Despite these issues, Gladys held on to hope that he might change his mind, given all the years they had spent together. However, she soon discovered that Agustin was secretly seeing other women, even though he introduced her as his wife in public. When Gladys confronted him about his affairs, Agustin reacted violently, pulling out a gun and threatening her life rather than letting her go. This terrifying moment made Gladys realize the danger of her situation. She knew she needed to escape, but fear for her life kept her from leaving immediately. It wasn't until November 1998, when she caught him in the act of cheating at his office, that she finally declared it was over for good. Agustin didn't try to excuse his actions and didn't believe she would really leave him. A few days later, Gladys moved out of the house he had rented for her and told her family about the breakup. Agustin, desperate to win her back, began leaving flowers, gifts, love notes, and even a Bible at her new home's doorstep. He kept calling her, hoping to meet and reconcile. However, Gladys was no longer influenced by Agustin's manipulations and had no intention of resuming their relationship. In February 1999, Rickard met James Preston at a popular restaurant. Like her, he was an accountant and spent his free time writing music. They felt an immediate connection and soon started dating. Unbeknownst to Gladys, her ex was still keeping a close eye on her, even spying through her windows. One day, while she and James were together at her house, there was a knock on the door. Agustin was there, demanding to speak to Gladys. When she refused and asked him to leave, he flew into a rage and began throwing stones at the windows. Alarmed, Rickard called the police but chose not to press charges, a decision that would later prove to be disastrous. In the summer of 1999, Preston proposed and Gladys eagerly accepted. They planned their wedding for September 26th and decided to honeymoon in Hawaii, envisioning it as a paradise retreat. As they prepared for their big day, inviting friends and relatives, it seemed nothing could disrupt their joy. However, on September 12th, 2 weeks before the wedding, Gladys encountered Agustin at the mall. He approached her, wrapping an arm around her waist as if they were still a couple, and offered to walk her out. Knowing his volatile nature, she didn't resist but soon excused herself, citing an urgent errand, and quickly left. A tragic event unfolded on her wedding day. Gladys was radiant in the lush white gown she had always envisioned, surrounded by dozens of friends and relatives at her home in Ridgefield, all gathered to celebrate. The groom awaited her at the church as she made her final preparations to leave. 2 professional photographers captured the moments, and several video cameras recorded everything for their future family archive. Yet the footage from that day would later be scrutinized not in celebration, but in a courtroom during a murder trial. At around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, a car driven by Agustin pulled up across the street from the house. A man emerged from the car and headed toward the house, but was confronted by Juan, who asked him to leave. Garcia, however, claimed he was invited to the celebration, prompting the bride's brother to step aside. As Gladys joyfully handed out bouquets to her nieces, Agustin entered the room. He approached her, withdrew a .38 caliber pistol from his briefcase, and fired 3 shots at very close range. The first bullet struck her shoulder, the second her chest, and the third her head, fatally wounding Rickard. She died instantly, and the medics who arrived shortly after could only confirm her death. Agustin did not attempt to flee and was arrested at the scene. He appeared calm and seemed prepared to confess, showing no sign of remorse. During the initial interrogation, Garcia claimed ignorance of Gladys's wedding, believing they were still in a relationship based on their recent encounter at the mall. He admitted to driving by her house daily and, upon seeing the crowd, decided to investigate. Upon discovering the wedding, he wanted to speak with Gladys, but alleged that he was attacked by her brother and son in the living room. In defense, he claimed to have drawn his gun, with the shots that hit Gladys being accidental. Garcia later stated that he could not recall the actual shooting. When his lawyers arrived, he retracted his statement and chose to remain silent. He was offered a plea deal to cooperate with the investigation in exchange for a lighter sentence, but he declined. This high-profile case attracted top human rights defenders eager to establish their reputation by winning the case. The defense strategy was to portray Garcia as a victim. The trial was scheduled for October 2001, giving the defense ample time to prepare as the businessman's once respectable image had been shattered in an instant. In the eyes of the public, Agustin was now seen as a true monster. Restoring his once good reputation seemed nearly impossible. His lawyers immediately began engaging with the press, providing interviews and organizing press conferences. They launched a multi-front campaign to portray Gladys as a greedy woman and a cheater who had heartlessly broken Agustin's heart. Simultaneously, the lawyers argued that their client was assaulted by the brother and son of the deceased, claiming that Agustin had grabbed the gun solely to defend himself, but accidentally killed his ex-girlfriend in the process. Human rights activists supporting Garcia suggested that Gladys had been having an affair with James while still in a relationship with Agustin, deceitfully planning her wedding while still accepting gifts and money from him. They labeled the murder as manslaughter, a crime committed in a passionate state triggered by an attack from Juan and Davis. As this narrative spread through the media, public opinion began to lean in favor of Agustin, with many believing Gladys deserved the tragic outcome for her alleged deceit and exploitation of his kindness. The victim's family made efforts to defend her honor, but it seemed the perpetrator's lawyers were winning the public relations battle. The murder was captured on video. On what should have been the happiest day of Gladys's life, photographers and a videographer were hired to capture every moment, including her final preparations in the living room, where a camera recorded everything. This camera caught the horrific act, showing Agustin approaching Gladys, pulling a gun from his briefcase, and firing 3 times at close range. All of the defense's arguments crumbled when the footage was reviewed. Neither Juan nor Davis was near him, contradicting claims they had attacked him. Instead, Agustin was seen moving deliberately toward his victim and aiming directly at her without any sign of provocation. Upon realizing the impact of this damning evidence, Agustin's lawyers argued that the video should not be shown to the jury. However, after reviewing the footage, the judge denied this request, allowing the video to be admitted into evidence. The trial of Gladys Rickard's murder commenced in the fall of 2001. Relatives and friends of Gladys testified that Agustin had stalked her after their breakup and tried to sabotage her life in every way possible. Due to her gentle nature, she hesitated to involve the police, a decision that tragically backfired. The decisive piece of evidence in the case was the videotape that cleared away any remaining doubts. On February 1st, 2002, Agustin Garcia was convicted of first-degree murder. He received a life sentence with the possibility of parole after serving 30 years. Agustin attempted to appeal the verdict, arguing that he had acted in a moment of temporary insanity upon learning of Gladys's impending marriage. However, his appeal was ultimately denied.